I've been saying on the channel for a while now, there's only 2 electric car companies on the face of the earth making a profit. I've been saying that BYD makes a very small profit per electric car. Tesla makes a lot of profit. Well, that story has to change now. BYD have just released some preliminary information, and the whole story just got a whole lot different. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the channel. My name's Sam Evans, and you're watching The Electric Viking. Great to see you. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks to all the new subscribers for joining us. Great to see you guys here. BYD. They are technically the world's second largest electric vehicle manufacturer. When I say electric vehicle manufacturer, I mean pure electric vehicle manufacturer. Now, if you're going to include plug-in hybrids, which I don't, because they are not the future, then yes, BYD is the biggest in the world by a pretty decent margin. Now, the thing is, BYD say they will deliver more than 3.2 million electric vehicles and plug-in hybrids next year. And they're planning on delivering around 5 million the following year. This is crazy. This growth is insane. And it would be considered unsustainable if the company was like most of its competition. For example, XPeng, NIO, Lucid, Rivian, not making a profit, making some pretty big losses. But they're not. They're vertically integrated, they make their own batteries, and now profit is about to surge by 400%. That is crazy. The crazy thing is, BYD has a backlog of around 600,000 vehicles. There is no shortage of demand for their vehicles, and that is even in the most saturated electric vehicle market in the world. That's the crazy thing here, right? There is so many Chinese automakers making EVs in China, willing to sell them at a loss to try and get market share. That's what BYD is competing against. And yet they're making a really significant profit. That's why this is a much bigger story than what it actually sounds. And it's probably the reason why BYD's price to earnings ratio, if you look at their stock, it looks like the stock is massively overvalued. But if you consider the trajectory they're on, it's not at all. China's biggest electric car maker said third quarter net profit will more than quadruple, not quadruple, more than quadruple, as it extends its sales lead over Tesla in the world's largest auto market. Now, that's what Reuters said. I don't like to look at it that way. I think Tesla are doing incredibly well. Both these car companies are doing incredibly well. There's no real need for the media to sort of target Tesla in the way that they are. Say BYD are beating Tesla, Tesla's beating BYD. They're both going to succeed. In my projections for 2030 video that I made a long time ago now, I said Tesla and BYD would be the 2 biggest automakers in the world by 2030. And I think if you look at the most logical, likely conclusion, likely scenario here, you can see their growth shows that both of them more than likely will be. Having ditched gasoline-powered vehicles from its product mix in January this year, meaning purely gasoline-powered vehicles, they do of course sell plug-in hybrids, BYD has more than any other automaker been able to capitalize on a range of incentives for electric cars offered by the Chinese central government as well as local government. That's been a huge benefit for BYD to be manufacturing their cars in China, where they get a range of different incentives, state incentives, federal incentives, all those things, right? Obviously, Tesla's been selling EVs in the US, where they've had a pretty big disadvantage there. I mean, they're getting no tax incentives for their vehicles. The $7,500 tax credit for EVs, they were punished. Tesla buyers haven't been able to get that in the US now for more than a year, whereas the competition have. So that's a pretty big disadvantage Tesla has had in comparison to BYD. And of course, Tesla operate in Europe, but the subsidies in Europe are lower than what they are in the US and in China for electric vehicle purchases. Now, robust sales and a product range broader than any other EV competitor have helped BYD, which is 19% owned, or was 19% owned by Berkshire Hathaway. Now it's about 18% after he sold a small percentage of their shares to significantly reduce their costs per vehicle. Of course, how do BYD do this? Well, one, they manufacture in China, that helps. But two, they are the most vertically integrated car company on the earth. They are. They're more vertically integrated than Tesla. Not by a whole lot, but they are more vertically integrated than Tesla. They make almost everything that goes into their cars. That vertical integration clearly is the key here. Well, the primary key, not the only thing, but the key here to make a profit from manufacturing an electric car, which is why legacy automakers are going to struggle. Legacy automakers, vertical integration is not something they do. Now, an improved product mix led by vehicles such as its upmarket electric Han sedan, which has just gone on sale, by the way, in Europe, has helped drive earnings. So vehicles like the BYD Atto 3, that's on sale here in Australia. It's very, very popular. It's been a huge sales success in Australia. New Zealand, same thing. Singapore, same thing. Gone on sale in Thailand. India just went on sale, I believe, this week. There's a whole bunch more EVs BYD are releasing all over the world. In fact, it's like every second day, the news says BYD just released a new EV for sale in Mongolia. They did within the last 24 hours, Mongolia, Nepal as well. They're just going everywhere. BYD estimated net profit for the July to September quarter to come in between 5.5 billion yen and 5.9 billion yen, which is 765 million to 820 million US dollars. That's a huge increase. That's an increase of 333% to 365% from the same period a year earlier. I mean, a year earlier, there was all these videos on YouTube saying how BYD were going to collapse because they weren't making a profit from their cars. These were videos created by people with a bit of an agenda. You can imagine what their agenda was, but clearly that was incorrect information. That said, BYD had to put themselves in position to succeed. And to do that today, it's been a long journey for the company. I've chronicled a lot of that journey here on the channel. In Hong Kong, BYD shares increased by 6% by Tuesday afternoon, giving them a market capitalization of 93 billion. Not far off the combined market value of General Motors and Ford put together. BYD's combined sales of purely electric vehicles and plug-in hybrid vehicles increased 250% in the first 9 months to 1.2 million vehicles, outpacing a 110% rise for the overall EV segment by a pretty wide margin. The other thing BYD have done is massively increase their production of batteries. They've gone from being 4th or 5th largest battery company in the world to nearly 2nd, just sort of neck and neck with LG Chem. By comparison, Tesla sold just over 318,000 purely electric vehicles, got to emphasize the point, purely electric vehicles, in China during the first 9 months of the year. Among domestic EV rivals, XPeng and NIO, both loss-making, sold more than 98,500 and 31,600 respectively. As you can see, XPeng sold 3 times as many vehicles as NIO, but NIO's vehicles are quite a bit more expensive. BYD said its huge jump in vehicle sales has relieved the pressure brought on by increases in raw materials costs, though it did raise prices on some models by as much as 6,000 yen. Now, I mentioned on this channel on a couple of occasions, some of you agreed, some of you didn't agree with me. That's okay. That's going to be the norm. But I said on this channel a few times that when BYD said it was raising its prices for its cars and its batteries to suppliers, that they weren't really doing that because they were being affected significantly by raw materials costs. BYD said they were. That was their story. That was their excuse to raise prices. But as you can see, they weren't. I think it's pretty clear. How else on earth would you increase profit by 400% if you were somehow drastically affected by raw materials costs? I think it's pretty clear that they weren't. This is just their excuse to raise prices, as you do. Why wouldn't you if you can? Remember, the thing is, BYD's vehicles are pretty much on par with gasoline-powered vehicles. I mean, the BYD Atto 3 that I just bought, it costs about the same price as gasoline-powered vehicles in the same segment of the same size car. So, clearly, they're still very, very affordable, even with those price increases. BYD's strategy on producing batteries and microchips and actually electric motors and skateboards, everything else, has helped it to weather the supply chain bottlenecks and inflation-driven cost pressures analysts at Fitch Ratings have noticed. Now, obviously, Ford said they got an extra $1 billion charge for their parts over the last 3 months, right? $1 billion they weren't aware that they were going to get charged, an increase of 13 to 20% on their parts. So you can see, right? I mean, Ford are just at the whims of suppliers. Same with pretty much all automakers, except, of course, BYD and Tesla. So when you're at the whims of other part suppliers, they can just increase the prices and there's nothing you can do about it. So fortunately, that's one of the things that BYD's been able to do. It's been able to get around that by making most things itself. The China Association of Automobile Manufacturers has estimated that EV sales will increase by about 57% this year to just under 6 million units, a market far greater than most countries' entire auto market. For example, the auto market in Australia, it's about 1 million vehicles per year. EVs are expected to account for 27% of overall China vehicle sales this year, up from 13% in 2021, the industry association said. So that's, well, as you can see, that means that the market has doubled in size. Many people were saying that wouldn't happen. There's all this shock and horror and coming from the media, especially the US media, saying stuff like, oh, the end of subsidies in China means that car sales and EV sales will collapse in China. I'm sure you've heard this sort of stuff, right? You can't listen to the general media. They have no idea what they're talking about. All they care is that you click on what they say, click on what they publish. Some subsidies for electric vehicles are set to expire this year, reports Reuters. Isn't that a familiar narrative? Although the government has extended an exemption of the purchase tax for EVs to the end of 2023, as they do every year. And as the media reports at the end of every year, oh no, China's in trouble. Chinese electric car manufacturers are in trouble. The Chinese government's not going to extend the subsidies. And yet again, they extend them and extend them and extend them, and they'll continue to do so until they own as much of the global auto market as they possibly can. Now, it's the same strategy really that's been put in place by the US and by Europe, German automakers, Japanese. You can't really blame them. Everyone is fighting for the world's biggest industry, the automotive industry. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.